Mr. Henry, a 70-year-old man with a gentle smile and a weathered face that speaks of years of hard work, lives alone in a small, modest home at the edge of the village. Despite his age and frailty, he starts each day before the sun rises, stepping into his tiny garden where rows of fresh vegetables grow under his meticulous care. His hands, calloused from decades of labor, tenderly pick each leaf of lettuce and bundle of scallions, ensuring they are perfect for the market. For Mr. Henry, this routine is more than just work. It is his way of staying connected to life, of finding purpose even in his old age. By dawn, Mr. Henry loads his goods onto an old, creaky bicycle, a relic from his youth that he has patched up countless times. The bike groans under the weight of his baskets filled with vegetables and a small tray of eggs, but it remains his steadfast companion. As he pedals down the narrow village roads, he greets familiar faces with a warm nod or a cheerful good morning. The world around him begins to wake, the air filled with the chatter of birds and the distant hum of the marketplace. Arriving at the market, Mr. Henry seamlessly blends into the lively atmosphere. The market is a tapestry of sounds and colors, vendors shouting prices, customers haggling, and the scent of fresh produce mingling with the aroma of street food. Here, Mr. Henry finds his place among his fellow elderly vendors, many of whom are his longtime friends. They gather in quiet moments to exchange stories, their laughter ringing out amid the chaos. To them, these mornings are more than just a chance to earn a living. They are a lifeline to a sense of community and belonging. Though his earnings are modest, Mr. Henry is content. Each coin he earns carries a deeper meaning. It represents his contribution to his family. His children, now grown, often urge him to rest, but Mr. Henry insists on continuing his work. "As long as I can stand, I'll do what I can," he often says, his voice tinged with both pride and determination. To him, providing even a small bit of support for his grandchildren's education or a festive meal during holidays is worth every ounce of effort. His resilience, quiet dignity, and unwavering sense of duty define his days, painting the portrait of a man who finds strength not in grand gestures, but in the simplicity and honesty of his life. On a crisp morning, with the sun just beginning to light the village, Mr. Henry set out on his daily journey to the market. His trusty bicycle, loaded with baskets of fresh vegetables and a tray of carefully arranged eggs, wobbled slightly as he pedaled along the uneven road. The weight of the goods tested his balance, but years of experience had made him adept at navigating these challenges. As he turned a corner into a narrow street, the morning's tranquility was interrupted by an unfortunate misstep. While adjusting the precarious tray of eggs balanced atop his vegetables, Mr. Henry's attention faltered for just a moment. His bicycle swayed, and before he could steady it, the handlebars brushed against a parked luxury car. A sleek, jet-black vehicle that seemed to gleam with sophistication. A faint, almost imperceptible scratch appeared on the car's polished surface, but to Mr. Henry, it looked catastrophic. The sound of his bicycle's handle colliding with the car startled him. He immediately braked, his heart pounding in his chest. The old man's face turned pale as he stared at the scratch, a mixture of fear and disbelief washing over him. His trembling hands reached for the basket that had toppled in the process, scattering leafy greens and cracking several eggs on the pavement. "Oh no, what have I done?" he muttered under his breath, his voice barely audible over the faint hum of passing vehicles. The sight of the luxurious car, so pristine and expensive-looking, filled Mr. Henry with a deep sense of dread. He was a simple man used to dealing with modest troubles like a flat tire or wilted vegetables. Not this. In his mind, the scratch symbolized an insurmountable debt, something far beyond his means to repair. He hurriedly bent down to gather the scattered vegetables, brushing the dirt off with shaking fingers, his lips murmuring apologies to no one in particular. As he fumbled to salvage what he could, a sharp voice cut through the air like a blade. "Hey, what do you think you're doing?" The sound made Mr. Henry freeze. Slowly, he turned to see a young man, sharply dressed in a crisp shirt, stepping out of the driver's seat of the car. The man's face was twisted in anger, his eyes fixated on the scratch as though it were a deep gash. The juxtaposition between the old man with his patched clothes and the imposing figure of the driver could not have been starker. Mr. Henry's mind raced. He wanted to explain, to apologize, but words seemed to escape him. Instead, he bowed his head low, clutching the handles of his bicycle as if they could shield him from the storm he knew was coming. The young driver stormed out of the car, his polished shoes clicking against the pavement with each hurried step. His well-tailored shirt and sleek watch glinted under the morning sun, reflecting the sharpness of his demeanor. His expression was a mixture of outrage and disbelief as he stared at the faint scratch on the luxury car's otherwise flawless surface. Turning his fiery gaze toward Mr. Henry, the driver's voice erupted like thunder, shattering the quiet murmurs of the street. "Do you have any idea what you've done? Do you know how much this car costs?" The harshness of his tone startled Mr. Henry, whose frail hands tightened around the bicycle handles in an instinctive act of self-defense. The vegetables in his basket quivered as if mirroring his trembling frame. Beads of sweat formed on his weathered forehead, and his eyes, wide with fear, darted between the young man and the scratch on the car. I'm so sorry, sir. It was an accident," Mr. Henry stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't mean to. The bike just slipped." But the driver was far from appeased. His anger seemed to feed on Mr. Henry's vulnerability, growing louder and more indignant with each word. "An accident? Do you think that excuses this? Do you even know how much it'll cost to fix this scratch? Probably more than your old bike is worth." The cruelty of the remark sliced through Mr. Henry's heart. He lowered his head, unable to meet the piercing gaze of the man towering over him. He felt exposed, humiliated, and helpless. A tiny figure crushed under the weight of his own guilt and the driver's wrath. By now, the commotion had drawn a crowd. Passers-by began to gather, forming a curious circle around the escalating scene. Some whispered among themselves, their faces reflecting mixed emotions: sympathy for the frail old man and disdain for the young driver's lack of restraint. Others stood silently, their expressions unreadable, as though watching an uncomfortable spectacle unfold. Mr. Henry, still clutching his bike, tried to reason with the driver, his voice quivering. "Please, sir, I'm just an old man trying to sell some vegetables. I don't have much, but I can try to pay for the repair. Please don't be angry." The sincerity in Mr. Henry's plea did little to soften the driver's anger. He gestured toward the car with a sweeping hand, his voice rising even further. "Do you think your few pennies from selling vegetables will even cover a fraction of this? People like you shouldn't be on the road if you can't even handle a bike properly." The crowd's murmurs grew louder. Some exchanged disapproving glances at the driver, clearly feeling that his reaction was disproportionate. A few looked at Mr. Henry with pity, their hearts aching for the old man who seemed so undeserving of such harsh treatment. Amid the growing tension, Mr. Henry stood frozen, his shoulders slumped under the weight of his shame. He tried to hold back the tears threatening to well up in his eyes, but the driver's relentless words made it nearly impossible. In that moment, Mr. Henry felt smaller than ever, a frail old man facing the wrath of a world that seemed too fast, too sharp, and too unkind. His apology hung in the air, unanswered and unacknowledged, as the crowd waited to see what would happen next. The appearance of the car owner. As the heated argument between the young driver and Mr. Henry reached its peak, the back door of the luxury car opened slowly. Emerging from the vehicle was a woman of striking presence, likely in her mid-40s. She was elegantly dressed in a fitted white blouse and a flowing black skirt, her heels clicking softly on the pavement. Her every movement exuded grace and authority, and her calm demeanor contrasted sharply with the chaos of the scene. The murmurs of the crowd grew quieter as all eyes turned to her. The woman surveyed the situation briefly, her sharp yet composed gaze taking in the frail old man, the scattered vegetables, and her visibly agitated driver. Her presence alone seemed to shift the mood, like a calming wind dispersing storm clouds. In a steady, measured tone, she asked, "What is going on here?" The young driver, momentarily startled by her appearance, scrambled to explain. His words tumbled over each other as he gestured toward the scratch on the car. "Madam, this old man. He scratched the car with his bicycle. Look at this damage. It's unacceptable." He pointed emphatically at the faint scratch, his voice still tinged with indignation. But the woman raised a hand, silencing him mid-sentence. "Enough," she said firmly, her voice carrying an authority that immediately commanded respect. The driver fell silent, his head bowing slightly, though the tension in his posture remained. The woman turned her attention to Mr. Henry, who stood trembling beside his old bicycle, his head lowered in shame. She approached him slowly, her heels clicking against the pavement, but her expression softened as she drew nearer. "Sir," she said gently, her voice a stark contrast to the driver's harsh tone. "Are you all right? Did you hurt yourself?" Mr. Henry hesitated, his hands still gripping the handles of his bicycle tightly, as if to steady himself. He looked up at her, his eyes filled with both fear and gratitude. I'm fine, ma'am, he stammered. It was an accident. I didn't mean to cause any trouble. The woman crouched slightly to inspect the scratch on her car, her movements deliberate and unhurried. After a moment, she straightened up and smiled faintly. It's just a scratch, she said, her tone calm and reassuring. Nothing serious. Her words seemed to lift a heavy weight off Mr. Henry's shoulders. His trembling subsided slightly, though his guilt remained. The woman then turned to the driver, her expression now firm and disapproving. Your behavior is unacceptable, she said, her voice sharp but composed. Apologize to him immediately. The driver's eyes widened in surprise, and for a moment, he appeared reluctant. But the woman's steady gaze left no room for argument. He reluctantly muttered an apology, though his tone lacked genuine remorse. Satisfied, the woman returned her attention to Mr. Henry. Please don't worry about the scratch, she said warmly. Accidents happen, and no harm was done. Mr. Henry's voice quivered as he replied, Thank you, ma'am. I'm deeply sorry for the trouble. If you'd like, I can try to save up to pay for the repairs. The woman shook her head gently, her kind smile unwavering. There's no need for that. Your apology is more than enough. Her words hung in the air, their kindness disarming both Mr. Henry and the crowd. The tension that had gripped the scene began to dissipate, replaced by a quiet admiration for the woman's grace and humanity. The onlookers, who had initially been drawn by the commotion, now murmured in agreement, their respect for the woman evident in their softened gazes. Some even smiled at Mr. Henry, as if to offer their silent support. With a few calm words and decisive actions, the woman had not only resolved the conflict, but also restored a sense of dignity to Mr. Henry, reminding everyone present of the power of compassion and understanding. As the woman tried to reassure Mr. Henry and defuse the situation, he still felt an overwhelming sense of guilt and worry. Despite her kind words, he couldn't shake the thought that he might have caused irreparable trouble. His hands fumbled as he reached into the pocket of his worn-out trousers, pulling out an old flip phone with scratched plastic casing and a faded screen. The crowd watched in quiet curiosity as he struggled to dial a number, his trembling fingers pressing the buttons slowly. I need to call my son, Mr. Henry muttered, almost to himself. He felt that he needed someone younger and more capable to help him handle the situation. As he was overwhelmed by the luxury car, the gathered crowd, and the stern driver. After a few rings, a warm but concerned voice answered on the other end. Dad? What's wrong? Are you all right? Mr. Henry's voice trembled as he replied, trying to keep his composure. Charlie, I accidentally scratched someone's car. A really expensive one. Can you come here? I don't know what to do. On the other end, Charles's voice hardened with worry. Where are you, Dad? Don't worry. I'll be there soon. Within minutes, the faint roar of a motorcycle engine echoed down the street. The crowd parted slightly as Charles arrived, parking his bike hastily and striding toward his father. His tall, broad-shouldered figure and determined expression made him stand out. He was a man in his early 30s, wearing a simple button-up shirt and jeans, his appearance humble but exuding a quiet strength. Dad! Charles called out, his voice filled with concern as he spotted his father standing beside his old bicycle. He quickly scanned the scene, taking in the scattered vegetables, the elegant woman standing near the luxury car, and the lingering crowd. His protective instincts flared, and his expression darkened as he approached. What's going on here? Charles demanded, his voice steady but tinged with anger. He turned to the driver, who had been the source of the earlier commotion. Did you treat my father poorly because of some scratch? The young driver, already cowed by the woman's earlier scolding, took a step back, muttering defensively. I didn't do anything wrong. It's his fault for damaging the car. Charles's anger simmered, his fists clenching as he stood protectively beside his father. He's an old man. You could have handled this with more respect. The tension in the air grew palpable as the crowd murmured in anticipation of a confrontation. Mr. Henry, sensing the situation escalating, gently tugged at his son's sleeve. Charlie, please, he said quietly, his voice tinged with both guilt and fear. It's my fault. Don't make this worse. Charles turned to his father, his hardened expression softening as he saw the worry in Mr. Henry's eyes. His protective instincts warred with his respect for his father's wishes, and he took a deep breath to calm himself. Before the situation could spiral further, the elegant woman stepped forward once again, placing herself between Charles and the driver. "Let's not escalate this any further," she said calmly, her voice carrying a firm yet soothing authority. "Your father has already apologized, and as I've said, the scratch is minor. It's not worth this level of conflict." Charles glanced at the woman, his anger dissipating slightly as he took in her composed demeanor and the sincerity in her tone. The woman turned to Mr. Henry and smiled reassuringly. "You've already done the right thing by apologizing," she said gently. "There's no need to involve anyone else or worry about repairs." Charles nodded slowly, his posture relaxing as he realized the woman's kindness and reasonableness. Though his frustration lingered, he felt a growing sense of gratitude toward her for standing up for his father and keeping the situation from escalating further. Standing beside his father, Charles took a deep breath and said softly, "Thank you for understanding. I just want my dad to be treated with respect." The woman nodded, her warm smile unwavering. "Respect should always come first, especially for our elders." With her calming words and actions, the tension in the air began to fade. Charles placed a comforting hand on his father's shoulder, silently reassuring him that everything would be all right. Together, they stood as the crowd began to disperse, the conflict resolved not through anger, but through kindness and understanding. The woman's graceful resolution. The tension in the air hung heavy as Charles stood protectively by his father, still visibly upset. The young driver shifted uncomfortably, realizing the crowd's judgmental eyes were now focused on him. Sensing that the situation needed delicate handling, the woman, the owner of the luxury car, stepped forward with a quiet authority that commanded attention. Her presence was calm yet firm, her graceful movements and composed demeanor giving the impression of someone used to resolving difficult situations. She placed a gentle hand on Charles's shoulder, looking him directly in the eyes as she spoke in a measured tone. "Let's not let anger dictate how we handle this. Your father has already apologized for what happened, and the scratch is truly insignificant." Charles, still simmering with frustration, hesitated, his clenched fists slowly loosening. The woman's voice carried a sense of reason and understanding that diffused his heightened emotions. Turning toward the driver, she addressed him with a sternness that left no room for argument. "This is not how we treat people, especially our elders. A minor accident like this does not justify disrespect. You owe Mr. Henry an apology. Not just for the way you spoke to him, but for embarrassing him in front of all these people." The young driver, already chastened by her earlier scolding, reluctantly lowered his head and muttered, "I'm sorry." His apology was quiet, almost inaudible, but the woman pressed him further. "Say it properly," she said firmly, her gaze unwavering. This time, the driver looked directly at Mr. Henry, his voice slightly louder but still tinged with discomfort. "I'm sorry for how I acted. I shouldn't have spoken to you that way." Mr. Henry, still feeling overwhelmed and guilty, gave a small nod, his voice barely above a whisper. It's all right. I didn't mean to cause any trouble." The woman then turned to Mr. Henry, her expression softening into one of genuine kindness. She reached out and gently touched his arm, her voice warm and reassuring. "Please don't worry, sir. Accidents happen, and this one is so minor it's hardly worth mentioning. What matters is that no one was hurt, and we can move on with our day." Mr. Henry looked up at her with misty eyes, his hands trembling slightly as he clutched the handlebar of his bicycle. "I'm so sorry for the trouble I caused. I'll try to find a way to pay for the repairs. It may take me some time, but I'll save up." Before he could finish, the woman shook her head and smiled. "You don't need to worry about that," she said firmly. "The scratch is nothing. Your apology is more than enough, and it shows your sincerity. That's what matters the most." Her words carried a kindness that seemed to lift the weight off Mr. Henry's shoulders. The crowd, which had been murmuring quietly, now fell into an attentive silence. Many onlookers appeared touched by her approach, their earlier curiosity turning into admiration. Sensing that Charles was still tense, the woman addressed him next. "I understand your frustration. You were protecting your father, and that's commendable. But the issue has been resolved. Let's not let this minor incident escalate into something bigger than it needs to be." Charles studied her for a moment, her calm gaze and rational words slowly easing his anger. He nodded, his tone quieter now. "Thank you. I just didn't want him to be mistreated. The woman gave a small, understanding smile. And you've done well to stand up for him. But sometimes, a gentle approach can resolve things more effectively than anger. With her thoughtful and considerate resolution, the atmosphere in the street shifted. The hostility and tension dissolved, replaced by a sense of calm. Mr. Henry, still clutching his damaged basket of vegetables, gave the woman a grateful look. For the first time since the incident began, he felt a glimmer of hope that everything would be all right. The woman's graceful handling of the situation left an indelible impression on everyone present. She had not only de-escalated the conflict but also reminded those watching of the importance of respect, compassion, and understanding in even the most challenging moments. With the tension easing, the crowd began to disperse, but the woman, still standing near Mr. Henry, noticed the scattered and damaged vegetables and eggs on the ground. Her eyes softened as she saw the older man bend down, trying to salvage what he could. His trembling hands fumbled to pick up a few intact items, but the sight of the crushed produce and leaking eggs made him sigh in quiet despair. The woman knelt beside him, her movements graceful yet purposeful. She began helping him gather the vegetables, carefully placing the salvageable ones back into his basket. The action caught Mr. Henry off guard. "Ma'am, please, you don't have to do this," he stammered, his voice filled with embarrassment. "These aren't worth anything anymore." She smiled gently, shaking her head. "Nonsense. Every little bit counts. Besides, these vegetables look fresh and healthy. Are you taking them to the market to sell?" Mr. Henry hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, but most of them are ruined now. I don't think I can sell much today." His voice carried a tone of quiet resignation, as though he'd already accepted the loss. The woman paused, then stood up and pulled out her wallet. Without hesitation, she took out a generous sum of money and extended it toward him. "How much do you usually earn from selling these? Let me buy them all." Mr. Henry looked up at her, stunned. He immediately shook his head, backing away slightly. No, I can't accept this. These aren't worth anything now, they're crushed, ruined. Please, don't waste your money." But the woman was insistent. "This isn't a waste. You've worked hard to grow these vegetables, and your effort deserves to be appreciated. Please take this as payment. It's the least I can do." Her voice carried such warmth and sincerity that Mr. Henry felt his resistance wavering. He hesitated for a moment, then reluctantly reached out to accept the money. His hands trembled as he held the bills, his eyes glistening with tears. Thank you so much," he said softly, his voice breaking with emotion. The woman smiled warmly. "You don't need to thank me. It's only fair. Life is hard enough as it is. We should help one another when we can." As she spoke, several onlookers who had stayed behind felt inspired by her actions. A few stepped forward to assist Mr. Henry in gathering the rest of his produce, while others offered their own small contributions. One man picked up the cracked eggs and said, "I'll take these for my chickens. They'll appreciate them." A woman added, "And I'll buy some of these greens for dinner. They look just fine to me." Mr. Henry, overwhelmed by the unexpected kindness, could only nod and mumble his thanks. The woman, seeing the support from the crowd, turned to them and said with a smile, "Thank you for helping. Small gestures like this make a big difference in someone's day." She then knelt down once more, placing a reassuring hand on Mr. Henry's shoulder. "Please, don't let this incident ruin your morning. You've worked hard, and you deserve to be treated with respect and kindness. Take care of yourself, sir." Mr. Henry looked at her, his eyes filled with gratitude. "You have a kind heart. I'll never forget this." The woman simply smiled and stood, her elegant demeanor leaving an impression of quiet strength and compassion. As she returned to her car, the mood in the street felt lighter, the earlier tension replaced by a sense of shared humanity. For Mr. Henry, the woman's gesture was not just an act of kindness. It was a moment of dignity restored, a reminder that even in difficult times, there were still good people in the world willing to lend a helping hand. As the luxury car prepared to drive away, the woman paused, turning back to address the lingering crowd. Her voice was calm but carried a weight of wisdom that compelled everyone to listen. "Life is already filled with enough struggles," she began, her gaze sweeping over the faces around her. "But we have a choice every day, to make it harder for one another or to make it a little easier." Her words were met with silence, the crowd hanging on to her every word. She continued, her tone now more tender, as though she was speaking directly to Mr. Henry and Charles. "This gentleman here," she gestured toward Mr. Henry, has lived a life of hard work and humility. We should honor people like him, not humiliate them for something that was clearly an accident. Mr. Henry lowered his head, his emotions threatening to overcome him. Charles, standing beside him, felt his earlier anger dissolve into a deep sense of respect for the woman's poise and kindness. Turning to the young driver, the woman softened her tone but maintained its firmness. And as for you, remember this: wealth and status mean nothing if you cannot treat others with respect. A small scratch on a car is nothing compared to the damage done by harsh words and a lack of empathy. The driver looked down, his face flushed with shame. He muttered another apology, this time directed not just at Mr. Henry but also to the crowd, which now watched him with disapproving eyes. The woman smiled gently and addressed everyone once more. Compassion and understanding cost us nothing, yet they can change someone's day, or even their life. Let's remember that. Let's strive to be better, for ourselves and for each other. Her words seemed to resonate deeply. A man in the crowd murmured, "She's right. We're so quick to judge. But what good does it do?" Another woman nodded in agreement, adding, "We all have bad days. But that doesn't give us the right to take it out on others." Charles turned to his father, his expression softening. He gently placed a hand on Mr. Henry's shoulder. "Come on, Dad. Let's head home. You've been through enough today." But before they left, Mr. Henry looked up at the woman, his eyes glistening with gratitude. "Thank you. I don't know your name, but I'll never forget your kindness." The woman smiled warmly. "No thanks are necessary, sir. Sometimes all it takes is a little understanding to turn things around. Take care of yourself. And know that you're not alone in this world." As the car drove away, the crowd began to disperse, each person carrying a piece of the profound lesson they had just witnessed. Some smiled at Mr. Henry as they passed, offering words of encouragement, while others silently reflected on how they could bring more kindness into their own lives. On the way home, Charles walked beside his father, pushing the old bicycle. The incident left him deeply moved, and he found himself listening intently as his father shared stories about a time when people were gentler, when communities were close-knit, and when small acts of kindness were the norm. For Charles, that day marked a turning point, a realization that respect, empathy, and compassion were far more valuable than pride or material possessions. And for Mr. Henry, the woman's actions restored a sense of dignity and hope that had been momentarily shaken. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, he felt a newfound warmth, not just from the morning sun, but from the knowledge that goodness still existed in the world, even in the unlikeliest moments.